Good evening, everybody. And if you're just tuning in, thank you so much for hanging in there for a few minutes. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. You are listening to or watching The Angel Rock. A little bit about me and the show, then I'm going to introduce my fantastic guest. I am a Canadian psychic medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher, and mentor, and I'm also a nurse. A little bit about The Angel Rock. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. We love having you here. Just as a little reminder, our UPRN main channel you may be used to, YouTube has decided to shut that down right now. So where you can find us right now is on UFO Paranormal Radio. All you have to do is look that up, and I'd love for you guys to join us and keep an eye on the chat. So if you've got questions or comments, I like to make people that join in live part of the show. You become kind of like our little family here. So a little bit about the Angel Rock. If you haven't been here before, I say cover all aspects of the supernatural, but anything. It could be ghosts, could be the paranormal, could be the law of attraction, the power of positive thinking, past life regression. And speaking of that, I have a fantastic guest for you. I want to give a huge shout out first to Joe Montaldo, who is the owner of UPRN. He is also our producer. He does all the hard work, so I can just sit and chat and enjoy my guest. And the guest that I have tonight is courtesy of a mutual friend, I'm sure, of both of ours, because I know you know him, Gavin Lee Davies. He always sends me the best guests. So who I have tonight is Steve Burgess, and a little bit about him. He's a hypnotherapist from the UK. He's conducted many thousands of past life regression sessions, and his book details some of the incredible healings his clients have experienced as a result of past life therapy. Each of the clients' stories are vividly retold using the words they spoke whilst in trance in their regression sessions. And it says they paint an exciting picture and describe in detail the events that took place in the past lives, often giving a fascinating insight into life in former times. And the book is actually called The Power of Past Life Regression. And welcome, Steve Burgess. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Lorilei. It's very kind of you to have me.
And I do want to give you huge kudos because just before we went live, folks, it's 2:20 a.m. in the UK right now. So thank you so much for being here.
It's okay. And I haven't even got my pajamas on. I'm actually still wearing proper clothes.
You could have worn your pajamas. That would have been okay. Listen,
Yep.
I'm really passionate about past life regression. It's part of some of the work that I talk to people about as a spiritual teacher when it comes to past lives. I work quite a bit out in the community. I always say I was so blessed, first of all, with my hospital experiences to be there at the beginning of life hundreds of times. I worked in the NICU and in maternal newborn. And then I worked in the community as a nurse, and I worked in palliative care. And you get into some interesting discussions with patients as they transition from this lifetime into the next, including what you see. But I strongly believe in past life regression. But I want to hear about what got you into this. What started with this, and why were you drawn to this type of work?
Well, I became a hypnotherapist as a result of my father stopping smoking.
Okay.
And my father's a scientist by profession. He tried everything to stop smoking for many years. Nothing had worked. And then eventually he went to see a hypnotherapist, and this hypnotherapist laid him in a comfortable chair, relaxed him, asked him to close his eyes, talked to him about being a non-smoker. And my dad didn't want to smoke anymore, didn't want cigarettes anymore.
Wow.
And he couldn't really get his head around this. It didn't make sense. His scientific left brain was saying this does not compute. So he started to read up about hypnosis and became so fascinated that he then went and trained as a hypnotherapist and started working privately from home as a sort of a hobby. And then I was a director of a publishing company which went bust, and I was wondering what to do, with the rest of my life.
Right.
And my dad said, "Why don't you be a hypnotherapist? Have a go."
Okay.
And I went and trained, and it was very much like coming home. It was something I maybe should have been doing much earlier in my life. And it sort of took off from there. But I wasn't a past life therapist in the early days, because in those days, this was 1992, not many people looked at past life regression very seriously.
Mhm.
So I'd seen it as part of my training, but never really trained properly with it. And then after about 6 months of being a hypnotherapist and just doing standard stuff, a young fella came to me with a very, very severe anxiety state.
Mhm.
And he was about 24 years old. And as he sat in my chair, in fact, I opened the book with this story about this man, this Gary. He burst into my consulting rooms
Okay.
and he was just a frazzle. He was shaking, he was hyperventilating
Wow.
as he sat in front of me and he was talking about his problems. He was stuttering and stammering. And I said, "So how long have you had the anxiety for?" He said, "Well, I've always been anxious all of my life.
Right.
But the last few years, since the children came along, this has got much, much worse." And he
Oh,
said, "It's got to the stage now where I just sit shaking all day long. I
oh,
can't work. I've had to give my job up. I'm just a bag of nerves. I've tried medication. It didn't work. It made it worse. I don't know what's caused it. My wife is sick of it. She said she's going to divorce me if I don't get better," which obviously put more pressure on him.
of
And
course.
he was just in a really bad state.
How
So,
debilitating.
well, I mean, he had no life. It took over his life. And
Mhm.
all day long, every day. And as he was sharing this with me, he was stuttering and shaking and stammering, and his
Mhm.
body was moving around. And so I thought, okay, well, we'll see where we go with this. And I guided him very gently into hypnosis, into a gentle trance.
Right.
And he started to relax.
Mhm.
And so I took him a bit deeper and took him deeper into trance. And his whole body just totally relaxed in my chair.
Wow.
And I then thought, okay, this is a fairly normal session. I'll just do some suggestions. We use what we call post-hypnotic suggestions
Right.
to feed his subconscious with some new ideas about letting go of the anxiety.
Mhm.
And then, quite out of the blue, all of a sudden he started to shake. I mean, he'd been laying there totally calm, his breathing was slow and deep, and then suddenly he started to shake.
Mhm.
And as his body was shaking, he started to talk. And he's saying, it was like he was living something in his head. And he
Okay.
started to say, he was half whispering, half shouting. And he was saying to somebody, "No, no, in here, quickly. They're coming. Hide the children. Hide the children. Hide them. Quickly, in here. No. Quiet, quiet, quiet." Then all of a sudden he started to scream and yell, and his body started to shake, and he's saying, "No, no, 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 not the children. No, not the children. No, please. No, no, no. Ah!" Bam. And he was completely prone in the chair. And his reaction was probably 100 times bigger than that, Lorilei. It was just screaming and yelling. And he flopped
I'm
down
getting
in the chair.
visions as you're telling me this. I'm gonna see where this story goes. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying that, so we'll see what happens. Okay. Mhm.
He flopped down in the chair, completely calm and totally quiet. And I was sitting there, my heart was beating. I thought, what's going on here? I said, "How do you feel?" He said, "Oh, I feel wonderful. I feel absolutely wonderful." He said, "I just feel completely calm." So I thought, I don't. But he was good.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere, right? And then, like you said, a
Totally out
hundred
of nowhere.
times worse than what you've
It
done
was
here. Yeah.
massive. And so I said, "What was happening?" He said, "It was as though I was in another body, in another time." He said, I was a man, and my wife and my children, we were hiding from soldiers. And we were terrified because if they found us, and he said, "We tried to hide, but then the soldiers found us. I think they were Nazis," he said. "I think they were
I
Nazis." And he
saw
said,
that. I saw, oh, I'm getting
"You
the
did see
biggest
that?"
goosebumps. That's what I was
Okay,
seeing. Nazis, and
right.
they're trying to hide the kids, and they
Yeah.
came bursting through the door, right? And they killed them
They
all, or
killed,
probably killed the
they
children
killed them all,
first.
shot them all. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
And I
he
haven't
was,
read your book yet.
no, you haven't, not yet.
Yeah, yet.
So he was laid in the chair. In the past life, he was dead. So I said, "So how do you feel though?" He said, "I feel wonderful." He said, "I've never felt this calm in my life.
Wow.
He said, "I just can't believe I just feel so relaxed." And Lorilei, his problem was cleared, it was fixed in 10 minutes. A lifelong problem which had got worse and worse. And of course, he said it had got worse as the children had got, when the children came along, because his subconscious mind was connecting to the past life where he had the children and they died horribly. Um, and his problem was completely cleared. And it was a shock to me. I thought, well, why don't I know something about this? You know,
Right.
this is very important. I should know this. And so I'd managed to get some information from American associations, regression associations in the States, and then started to work with past lives more and more.
Mhm.
And over the years now, after 29 years, I've created a very structured form of regression therapy where, using the client's subconscious and the answers it gives me, we can find out not just are the past life causes to problems, but how many past lives. And we can
Mhm.
find out lots of other information as well. So, having done now thousands of past life regressions over the years, for me, it is such an incredibly powerful healing for so many issues, for virtually any issue that we have as human beings.
Mhm.
And I've detailed all this in the book. These are my clients' stories
Mhm.
of what happened in their past lives and how they got better from the
Mhm.
problems that they brought in the first place.
Now, I understand about why this works. I've actually studied, not that they're related, but near death experiences for about 40 years. I've really done a lot
Mhm.
of, started to really get into a lot of study about past life regression. You are now another resource. So I'm so glad we've connected because I've tried to explain this to people and you meet them all the time. They've got this pain or they've got us, this fear or phobia or anxiety. It can be anything in life and they've tried everything and nothing will resolve it. Or their back is against a wall and they have no other choice. And it's like, what do you have to lose? And again, there's a Canadian fellow that I've had on your last year actually, and he's been doing it for about 25 years. And, he believes exactly what you said. And I believe this totally
Mm.
because it works. Now, what I'd love to hear, and I understand why it works, and I know you do, but for our listeners, maybe they've never heard this term before. They've wanted to know more about it when it comes to regression. So
Mm.
again, we're looking at past lives. People may think, well, I thought that was just like one of those woo-woo topics that, for hippie guru types. So why does
Yeah.
this work and what is it, Steve, for our listeners and our viewers?
Okay. Well, maybe if I sort of explain a little bit about what
Absolutely.
hypnosis is, first of all.
Absolutely.
Um, and hypnosis, because many people get the wrong impression about hypnosis. They think it's something weird or supernatural or paranormal. They've seen things on, they've maybe seen stage hypnotists who are humiliating people, or they've seen stuff on Hollywood movies. And it's just nothing like that. I mean, hypnosis is a completely natural state. It's something we all go into every day, at least 24 times a day, without realizing.
Absolutely.
So, a trance, and that's the word we use, is a natural state. Anybody who drives a car
Yes.
goes into trance every time they drive, well, virtually every time they drive the car. Anybody who goes on, in English, we call it automatic pilot in the car.
Yes. Yeah.
That's hypnosis, that's trance.
Mhm.
When we're drifting into sleep and we're drifting out of sleep, that's trance. When we daydream,
Mhm.
that's trance.
Mhm.
When we meditate, even meditation and trance are sisters. So it's a natural state. And what most hypnotherapists like myself are trying to do is get over the fact that there's nothing to fear. It's just a process where we go inside ourselves. And as a rule,
Mhm.
we relax in trance. So, what I tend to say to my clients, think relaxation, and we're on the right track.
Mhm.
Think relaxation, and you're not going to be in a coma, you're not under anesthetic, you're not under my control,
Not
you're
at all.
not going to be floating around the room with your eyelids closed. There's no levitation involved. There are
I
no
can
angelic
share.
voices singing
Oh,
in
go
the
ahead.
background.
I
Sorry.
apologize. I have slow internet. We're getting that fixed on Thursday, so it'll seem like there's a pause. Most people know watching or listening, but if I happen to accidentally speak over you, I apologize. I
It's
want to
okay.
give Zach Man a shout out. He's one of our regular supporters in one of my shows. So, hey, Zach Man. What I wanted to add to definitely verify 100% with you about hypnosis. First of all, I was trained I was going for surgery when I was in my late teens and a lot of pain medication I was allergic to. So I had a pediatrician allergist who, this is back in the early 80s. He had a computer and it was a biofeedback device. And I had to learn how to relax enough to be able to control this very simplistic video game. I was
Mhm.
hypnotized. But the other gentleman, you may know him, Chris Lee. He's Canadian. His wife is actually from the UK. She's a psychic medium, but she's a Canadian. There's many people that do this work, and it's very
Yeah,
important. But the reason I share this, he asks you as a host before you come on the show, there's no pressure. Would you be open to having a session with me just so you can experience what the process is and if
mm,
you're open to it sharing? And I was. And I'll tell you, folks, you know exactly everything that's going on. You're not in a trance, you're not doing, you have no control over, the hypnotherapist has no control over you. You're basically a guide to help guide to get to the heart of the issue that you're there for. Would I be correct in saying that?
very much so. Thanks for that, Lorilei. That's brilliant. Absolutely the case.
Mhm,
So, nobody's under my control. They are just relaxing inside themselves.
mhm,
Um, and okay, some people do relax quite deeply. Other
mhm.
people are in a lighter state. So there are
Yeah.
different depths of trance, of hypnosis. But for most people, they're just gently relaxing. Still, the left brain is ticking over, still analyzing what's happening.
Mhm.
And what this inner going inward state allows is for the subconscious to come through. So again, let me explain that, because people hear the word subconscious. The way I tend to explain it is to say, look, the mind is like an iceberg.
Mhm.
The tip of the iceberg above the waves is the conscious thinking mind.
Yes, yes. I love this.
That's that's less than 1%.
Mhm.
Is possibly about 0.01% of our mental capabilities.
Right.
The vast bulk of the iceberg beneath the waves is the subconscious, the 99.9% of the mind that we don't usually use on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
So this is one reason why hypnotherapy is such a powerful healing tool, because we're using the engine room of the mind.
Yes.
But the
I love
subconscious,
these analogies because I've tried to explain this, and in the spirituality world, they'll call the brain, which people thinks controls everything, the monkey mind. And I don't like that term. So if I ever use your analogy, I will always give you credit. But I love that because people can see that with the iceberg. They've seen that picture where you think you've seen everything, right? It'll say, and there's a tip of an iceberg, and then you see under the water. And I love this, Steve. That's beautiful the way you describe it.
well, and the subconscious is the seat of our emotions, the seat of our creativity, the seat of our imagination.
Mhm,
It contains all of our memories.
mhm,
So, and I'll be quite honest now, Lorilei, after 29 years of doing this job,
mhm.
I actually believe that we all have a higher self, and that I believe the subconscious either is our higher self
Mhm.
or is intimately connected to the higher
I
self.
believe that. I call them synonymous, and I even truly believe because I and maybe we'll even get there because I want to talk about your book, what's within, but there I'd love to know if you even get into future regression sometimes because so how do we know that if the subconscious does not know all, including that we've had thousands of past lives, all of
Mm,
us, and how do we know that? Right? How do we know all that stuff? I believe the subconscious knows everything. That's why
okay,
I make it synonymous with the higher self for my teaching purposes.
good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it has an awesome wisdom,
Mhm.
and for me, as the therapist who wants to help my clients to get better,
Right.
then I work with the subconscious, not against it. I work with the
Mhm.
subconscious, and regression is about letting the client go back into the past
Mhm.
to wherever we need to go to release, in most cases, the trauma or traumas that have caused the problem in the first place. Well,
Mhm.
not necessarily the first place, that are connected to causing the problem. So, just as a very simple example,
Mhm.
I had a client who came to me with a dog phobia. She had a phobia of dogs.
Right.
And she was terrified of dogs, Lorilei. I mean, this wasn't somebody who was a bit scared.
Mhm.
She was terrified. She could hardly leave her house in case she saw a dog. If she went out into the city, she had to have people around her just in
Oh.
case she saw a dog anywhere.
Mhm.
This is a big phobia. And I asked her in our first session, what's caused this? She said, I haven't got a clue. I've had it all of my life.
Okay.
So I guided her into trance, and her subconscious indicated, because I use a technique where the subconscious uses the client's finger to signal to me.
Okay.
And it indicated that when she was a child, something had happened. So I guided her back, regressed her back while she's in trance, while she's resting in a relaxed state in the chair. And she went back into a memory that she had no conscious memory of. She'd forgotten this, she'd repressed it. But she relived a memory when she was about 2 years old in this present lifetime, when Mummy took her as a little toddler to the
Mhm.
park. And Mummy put her in a buggy. I don't know whether you call them buggies in the US, but
Carriage, a stroller. I know what you mean by a buggy,
yeah,
though.
okay. In the olden days, we call them tansads in England, but it's a pushchair, whatever, buggy. And she straps her in. She strapped the little girl in and takes her to the park. Now, at this stage in the session, my client is really very calm, and she said, "Oh, we've come to the park now." She's got her eyes closed. She's sharing with me what she's reliving. And she said, Mommy's taken me to the duck pond, and she's left me at the duck pond. She's gone to talk to a friend. And then my client was very quiet for a minute or two, and her head was going around. She was looking in the park. And then suddenly she started to do this in the chair.
Mhm.
And I said, "What's happening?" And she said, "There's a dog. There's a big dog, and it started to sniff me. And I don't like it. Go away." And she
Mhm.
whacked out at this imaginary dog. And the
Mhm.
next thing, she started to scream and scream and scream, "It's bitten me, it's bitten me." And the dog had bitten her on the face.
Aw.
Now, of course, she was trapped. She couldn't get out of the stroller.
Mhm.
So, which made it worse. Now, of course, Mummy runs across and shoos the dog away. But that memory was the cause of the dog phobia.
Mhm.
So we release the trauma, release the emotions, because all of our problems, and this is the regression model, all of our problems are caused by locked in feelings and emotions from past traumas.
Mhm.
Release the trauma, the problem gets better.
Yes.
And that's what happened. She cried for a while, then she calmed down. At the end of the session, she came out of trance. I asked her to think about dogs when she was okay. And the reason she wanted the phobia fixing was because she was about to go on holiday to come over to the States to stay with her daughter who had a dog. And she
Ah,
said, last year we went and the dog had to be put in kennels for a few weeks. She said, that's not fair on the dog. That's
right.
not fair on my daughter's children. So, anyway, about maybe 2 months later, 6 weeks, 2 months later, there was a knock on my office door. And this lady was there with photographs of herself in the States on holiday with her arm around this ruddy great big dog.
I love it. Zach said,
So,
oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
that's the concept of regression. So just one more minute, if that's okay.
No,
Um,
take your time. Like I said, please don't.
sure.
Everybody knows that watches, and like I said, our internet is finally getting upgraded on Thursday. So, like I said, that's why I wanted to let you know. If I accidentally speak over you, I
Okay,
apologize. Just keep on going.
that's okay. I've spent all of my life with women speaking over me, Lorilei. I'm quite used to it. Okay.
That's not on purpose, I promise.
So, but no, so there are three areas that I regress
Mhm.
people to. First of all, this present lifetime, and
Right.
most of us carry emotional baggage from this present life.
Mhm.
Secondly, past lives. And
Mhm.
thirdly, into our ancestors' lives, because we
Ooh,
can also inherit trauma from our ancestors in
yeah.
our bloodline, from our parents and grandparents and great grandparents, etc., etc.
Mhm.
So at some stage, I'll write another book about the ancestral regression, I think.
And
But
even in the womb, I've been reading
oh yeah,
about, yeah, we can pick up, especially from
we
our
do.
mothers, because, and
Yeah,
again, no blame on mothers. I'm not saying that for anybody may take it that way, but whatever your mother is picking up energetically or fears and anxieties. And there's even science that is starting to promote this. I know there's a lot of science going into the research of mitochondrial DNA and what does that carry in our genetic profile, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, my understanding is that the ancestral regression is scientifically proven,
Mhm.
but I'm not a technician. I sort of leave that to technical people. I'm
Mhm.
just there to get people better. But
Abs
yeah, we often do rebirthing. We take people back to relive the birth in this life, to relive and re-experience birth trauma, to release birth trauma, and also guiding people back into the womb to re-experience being in the womb. I had a client, a gentleman who came with a very bad anxiety state,
Mhm.
and it was one of the causes was when he was in the womb, and he experienced this when he was in trance. His father tried to abort him by punching his mother in the stomach. And
Oh
while he was experiencing this in the session, it was very dramatic, and he was rolling around and crying, and he was
oh
trying to
my
get away. So
oh
he'd carried that trauma all of his life.
Mhm.
So yeah, you know, the body remembers these things. I mean,
Absolutely.
you talked a little bit earlier about pain. You know, so many physical problems and mystery pains are caused by blows in past lives, deaths in past lives,
Mhm.
especially.
Mhm.
So a lot of past life therapy is about releasing death trauma.
Yes, a lot, like, including from what I understand, I think, if I remember correctly, some of the top fears are fear of success, fear of drowning, that suffocation feeling around the neck is one, and even, like, a claustrophobia, and a lot of those, have you found in your personal experience, have come from past lives, from the trauma?
My estimation, I mean, I've done over 15,000 therapy sessions now,
You
so
can
I've
speak
done a
from
lot of
an
work.
expert experience
Exactly.
level,
I'm
definitely.
not sort of making this up. This is stuff that happens time after time. I estimate that at least 60% of phobias come from past lives. At
Mhm.
least 60%. Um, you know, talking about things around the neck, I had a lady called me. Her 16-year-old son was due to have some. It was trying to have dental surgery. She said he's got this major dental surgery that he has to undergo. He's terrified of needles. And she said, we've just had him yesterday at the dentist. And as the dentist came across with the syringe to inject him, my son, she said, was screaming and fighting. He actually punched the dentist and kicked
Oh,
the nurse. And the dentist threw him out. And he said, I'm not going to treat him. I can't treat him when he's like this.
mhm,
Can you help him?
mhm,
So this lad came to me, 16 years old. And this is the thing as well. People often say, well, all the people who come to you, Burgess, must believe in past lives.
mhm,
No, they don't. This is a 16-year-old lad. He doesn't know about these sort of things.
mhm.
And as he sat in the chair in front of me, um, and I said, so tell me about the needle phobia. He said, well, I'm not sure if it is a needle phobia. He said, I have a terror of people touching my throat and my neck. And he
Ah,
said, I don't even like to touch my neck. He said, also, I hate it. The idea of people touching my wrists. He said, I just flip out. So, of
mhm,
course, what was happening as the dentist is coming with the syringe, it was as if he was trying to touch his neck. He
mhm.
said, I don't even like it when people touch their own necks. So I
Ooh,
said, so if I touch my neck, you'd be a bit. He said, don't do that, please. Don't do that. I said, so if I were to try and touch my neck, he said, please don't do that. It really gets to me. So I
mhm,
said, well, if I tried to touch your neck, he said, I would fight you. I would actually fight you. We'd have a fight. Okay, so this is a big phobia.
mhm,
I guided him into trance,
mhm.
into a gentle hypnotic state, and his subconscious indicated that the cause of this phobia was two past lives.
Wow.
And both of these were death experiences. In the first past life, he was a young woman, and bear in mind, we often change sex from
Yeah.
life to life.
Mhm.
He was a young woman who was she had to be executed in front of a group, and she had her throat slit.
Oh.
And then the second past life, he was executed by being beheaded, but he was laying looking upwards at the axe as it came down.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
So we release both of those deaths. And I often say to my clients, this is not fun therapy. You know, it can sometimes people can cry and sometimes they shake. Occasionally we get, as with my first client, Gary, we get big dramatic explosions in them. I mean, it doesn't happen very often.
Mhm,
But he cried, he released the fear, he was very, very scared.
Mhm.
He died in both of the lives. We cleared the lives. We cleared all the energy, all the trauma
Mhm.
out of them. And I
Yeah.
brought him out of trance. I said, "How do you feel?" He said, "I feel really good, so calm." So I said, "How do you feel if I do that to my neck?" And he said, "Yeah, that's okay, fine."
Mm.
Okay, I said, "How would you feel if I asked if I could touch your neck?" He said, "Well, I think it's okay."
Mhm.
So I stood maybe 10 feet away from him and slowly moved towards him with my hand. And I said, "Just stop me at any time. If you start to feel a buzz, frazzled inside, just stop me." And I came all the way up to him and put my hand on his neck, completely relaxed, completely relaxed.
I love that. Now, what I
It was
want to
cleared.
ask for
And
our,
his,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, his mother emailed me about 3 weeks later to say he's had the dental surgery. It was a complete
Uh,
success. Thank you so much.
like, this is life changing. But what I want to ask you, because I know there will be people thinking this, that as I understand it, and for myself too, because I'm a chronic pain sufferer and I'd gone with the other session, I'd lost all the feeling in both hands completely. No reason, just out of the blue. And I witnessed the death. I guess it was way back, like I don't know if it was caveman or what, but I was rolling. I'd been pushed off the edge of a ledge and I was rolling down the rocks. So it explains why I've got a lot. I didn't release all the pain, but it did fix my hands. That was the one reason. And it was released right away. But my thing is, a lot of people, when they hear that, like you said, it's not fun, pleasant work, but you're not actually feeling everything. It's the emotion you're releasing. So people know, like I can explain it from my own perspective. It's like watching a movie of yourself. You know it's you. You see what happens. If there's emotions that need to be released, those are released, right? But so that people don't think they're reliving this death, like the pain, right? For people.
No, it's very unusual to relive pain. It does occasionally happen,
Hmm.
but it is unusual. In most cases, it's about releasing
Yeah.
the fear, the anxiety, the sadness, the guilt, the anger, the
Hmm.
negative emotion that we have locked in. But some people do experience the pain. But if they do, then it's okay for them to do that because it releases it. And
Hmm.
remember, the subconscious protects, so it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I often say to my client, I mean, some clients they do talk about past lives because they don't want to do past lives because they don't believe in past lives. So they'll
Right.
sometimes say to me, "Oh, all that past life stuff that you do, Burgess, don't do that with me." I said, "Well, we go where your subconscious needs to go, but if well, I'm frightened, I might die in a past life." I said, "But if you die in a past life, let's say you die in a battle, we don't finish the hypnotherapy session later when you open your eyes and you find your legs propped up against the wall and there's blood spattered all over the door. That
Hmm.
doesn't happen. It's
Hmm.
just an energy from the past that is being relived and released. And once it's gone, then you get better.
Hmm.
So sometimes there can be some pain that comes through, but
Hmm.
that's unusual.
Hmm.
Um, and it may be for you, Lorilei, that you got the hands back, but it could be that there were other past lives
I
causing this
believe that.
problem.
I believe that totally.
So, I
Absolutely.
mean, sometimes it's two, three, four, five past lives, occasionally more than that.
Mhm.
And as a rule, until you work through them all, usually you won't get 100% better.
Mhm, and that's what's happened, so I know that. Who knows, maybe I'll be reaching out to you privately to book some sessions because it's very fascinating to me. I believe in this, I'm open to it, and I'm
Mm,
very trusting of hypnotherapy, and you'd be very surprised because there's many people that I know, there's, somebody with our network actually that does this work that had sort of cautioned me, "Be very careful, you don't know this person." I do know this person quite well now, I didn't when I had the session, because
mm,
this is things people will hear, and let's give them a little bit of peace of mind. Your goal is to help people, not to slip in things, because that's what I kept hearing. Somebody might slip in, your hypnotherapist that you're working with, slip in something and program something in there that
mm,
doesn't serve you. And I never ever considered that. I still wouldn't. And I can tell from what you're talking about and this incredible book that you've written is to let people know you're here to help. And if it's going to be one session or maybe a few sessions, and it's been that debilitating, some of these stories, to be
mm.
relieved like that, what do you have to lose? That's what I keep saying to people. What do you have to lose? Nothing, right?
And the beautiful thing about this is that hypnotherapy is a radical therapy. Regression therapy is generally fast.
Mhm.
So, it's not like, I mean, in the States, many people have psychoanalysis, which
Mhm.
can go for years and often with no real benefit.
Right.
Well, the good thing about this therapy is if it doesn't work, it doesn't work quickly.
Mhm.
And that means that you don't have to have years and years of therapy to find it isn't going to work.
Mhm.
We will know within a few sessions.
Mhm.
And of course, nothing works for everybody.
Mhm.
There's no such thing as a 100% cure.
Mhm.
But, there's always that sort of safety net that you don't have to waste lots of money and time if it isn't going to work. And I'm always very honest. I always say I have an honesty clause, a no bullshit clause. I just want to get people better. That's what I do. That's
Mhm.
what I'm here on earth to do. And so it's my job, man.
Mhm. No, and I love that you say that because I always kind of cringe when I hear people say it works 100% or this works. Nothing is infallible. Not people are different, everybody's different. And
Yeah,
so I have great respect that you said no, and the fact that you've and I want people to hear this because again, I end up counseling, not counseling professionally, but coming for readings or whatever it may be, or healing
yeah,
sessions and say it's not responding to crystal reiki, or somebody's got a major, I know somebody right now that is going has to have surgery and they're in a lot of pain, and with what we're going through in Canada, and I'm sure you can appreciate as well being in the UK with the present situation, and I said, why wouldn't you just consider having a session, see if it might help with even some of the pain, that you don't need to have maybe your surgery right now. It's not a life-threatening surgery, but it's going to be a whole joint replacement. And I said, if you could just put it off, what have you got to lose? Yeah, you're going to pay for a session, but it's not like you're going to be paying, through the nose. Like, what do you got to lose? Right?
yeah,
That's what I
yeah,
say.
yeah.
Hmm.
And I mean, one of the stories, certainly in the book, which I like to share with people because it is
Absolutely.
dramatic,
Hmm.
is a client who came to me with a severe back pain.
Hmm.
And she was a lady who was a magistrate in the UK, so
Okay.
she's not into all this sort of
Me
spiritual
too.
woo-woo stuff. It's
Mhm.
not her. But the back pain was getting worse. She was in her early 30s. She couldn't train anymore to the gym. She was putting weight on. She was depressed because of the pain. She was depressed, so she was overeating, putting more weight on. She'd
Mhm.
even had surgery. They'd taken her into the hospital, put her under anesthetic, opened the back up. They couldn't find anything wrong with her. They stitched her back up again and sent her home with painkillers. So she came to me pretty skeptical, but she came because a friend of hers had come to me a little while earlier who was an alcoholic, a functioning alcoholic, 16 years as an alcoholic.
Oh.
And she could work every day, but as soon as she got home, she started to drink every night. And by 9 o'clock, she was absolutely smashed.
Hmm.
And and this was one of the, we call them one hit wonders. A client who in one session got fixed.
Wow.
So I took her into trance, and she released some stuff from some past lives. She never drank again. It
Wow.
was extraordinary. That took my breath away.
Hmm.
I was expecting some extensive therapy, but she went into past lives completely cleared. So she told her friend, the magistrate with the back pain, and she came to me.
Hmm.
I guided her into trance and um, took her into a nicely relaxed state. And her subconscious indicated that there were 4 past lives causing the back pain.
Hmm.
The first past life was the big one, and it had all the energy in it. And she basically went back into a past life as a young Nazi officer in the Second World War, a male officer. And this young Nazi officer was part of a Nazi team that was going around Europe stealing art treasures and shipping them back to Berlin.
Hmm.
And a bit of a cushy number, really. But then things went wrong, and this young man got taken to the Eastern Front and was shipped out to fight against the Russians, because think that, you know, there was a big campaign to try and get to Moscow. And what then, and this boy was then terrified. He was only about 18, 19, 20 years old, and they were in the snow, there was fights everywhere, there was skirmishes, there was Russian snipers,
Right.
and he was absolutely terrified. And then my client then said, okay, well, she calmed down a little bit in the chair, and she said, well, I think it's about April 1942, and we're about 40 miles from Moscow,
Mhm.
near a little town called Smolensk or something.
Mhm.
And bear in mind, she'd never researched the Second World War or what happened in the
So
Eastern
there's no
Front.
way she'd know this.
And I looked at those facts. I looked at a map later, and 40 miles from Moscow was this little town. Um, and she said, we're bogged down in the snow. We can't get any further. There's no supplies coming through. They can't get the benzene to us. They can't get the gas to us. The trucks are stuck in the snow. And, you know, we're just stuck here. And the snow's coming down. And in the chair, she was then starting to shake quite a bit because it was just such a scary time. Then what happened is that young man then made the biggest mistake of his life, because one of his soldiers told him that in a church in a village behind the Nazi lines, so a village that the Nazis had captured, in the church was an icon, like a Russian
Mhm. Yeah.
religious painting that
Mhm.
might be worth stealing. And of course he thought, okay, well, I'll have a look. So he made a big mistake. He thought, well, it's only a mile away behind the lines. He jumped on a motorbike without an armed escort and went on his own. Now, what then happened was a massive shock to me, and I sort of half demonstrated it. I said, so my client's laid in the chair, and I said, so what happens now? She said, well, I've arrived at the village church.
Mhm.
It's completely deserted. The streets are deserted. There's nobody about. She
Mhm.
said, I'm getting off the motorbike and I'm looking for the entrance. And then suddenly she went, ow! And she screamed and she threw herself up in the air, about a meter in the air, and landed with a big crash in the chair. And she started
Wow.
to cough and moan and gasp. And I said, what's happened? She said, I've been shot. I've been shot. I've been shot. And so she then took about 20 minutes to die,
Oh,
which is quite a long time in past lives.
long time.
Guided her through the death, and of course, then she went into spirit and experienced deep calmness.
Mhm.
I then took her back through the death again a few times, because we sometimes have to do this. This is, if you don't go back enough and release all the energy, it won't be fixed. So we had to go back through the death, I think, 4 times. And each time it wasn't pleasant when she got shot, but each time the reaction was less and less.
Yes. So is that how
The,
you gauge it, Steve, is
yeah.
by back? Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's a great question. And
Mhm.
it either it's faster the death, or there's very little energy in it. The fourth time when the bullet went in, she just gasped and went, oh, and
Mhm.
she was dead.
Mhm.
Guess where the bullet went?
Your spine.
Exactly in exactly the place where the pain was and the problem was. Okay, she came out of trance and she was shocked. She was shocked, as you can imagine. Um, but she came back to me a couple of weeks later to say that the back pain was probably 75 to 80% better. We cleared up the other 3 past lives really with a few sessions. We did a bit of work on releasing depression.
Mhm.
The back pain completely disappeared as though it had never existed. So mystery pains are usually past life injuries, usually.
Okay, here's a good one for you because we hear this question with past lives. I've had to explain this and I don't do this work. So, and you've explained things and shared things so beautifully. So, what it is say you've got chronic pain, you had an accident, a car accident, you hurt your neck. 10 years later, we'll use my example. I was a nurse visiting a community. I was visiting a trailer park. I went through the side door of this particular trailer. It was a big hoarder's trailer. I was there just to do a dressing. That's it. And very nice gentleman, but a very poor area of my city. I didn't even know this trailer park existed.
Mhm.
But where I had parked, I said to him, "Would you mind if I use the front door, please?" I said, "It's closer to my car." And he said, "Oh, by all means." I kid you not, as I open the door and I step out, I have my 40-pound bag with me because I had to carry quite a bit of stuff. There was a
Mhm.
hole in the front steps covered by a rug, and I fell through and shattered all my discs. So I haven't been able to ever return to nursing again. Now,
Mhm.
I believe, even as a healer, that the human body is capable of healing itself, but because of what we either carry from past lives, encounter in this life, whether it's traumatic, energetic, spiritual, what have you.
Mhm.
So what and I have some work to do myself, we all do, and I know that this can be clear. So that's why I
Mhm.
shared this. It wasn't for pity or anything. I don't even usually tell people this story. But what I'm saying is you get people that believe, okay, say I had this accident. I third 25 years later, still in the same shape. Now the body should have been able to heal itself, right? So this is what people will say, "Well, this is from my accident. This is why I'm this way." But what's your experience? Are you finding that there's still things from past lives that are contributing from preventing a total and complete healing? It's
Sometimes,
fantastic.
yes.
It's
Sometimes,
fantastic.
yes. So, I mean, quite often, if you were to come to me as a client, and we do a session
Yeah,
online, as you know, I do all the sessions online now.
yeah,
Um, I'd be looking, first of all, probably to release the trauma of that
yeah.
particular accident all
Mm,
those years ago, and
absolutely.
see if that improve things. But there's always this possibility, because we've lived so many lifetimes that we have patterns over many lives. So
Yes.
there's a possibility that a similar injury has occurred in a past life, which also needs releasing,
Hmm.
because then the energy that's locked in your energy field in this life can be
Yeah.
released fully. So, for me, we'll do both. We'd work on this life and to see if there's any past
And
life
I
trauma.
apologize for using myself. I didn't mean it, but I'm comfortable sharing that, rather than say somebody else's story that someone had shared. But this is something, again, when I'm talking to people, because I really believe in this work. I really, really do. And I keep saying to people, what do you have to lose? Like the magistrate that came to you because they saw what happened with a friend. Did they believe it? No. But when they came out of trance, right? And look
Yeah,
what happened.
yeah. And I mean, I'm at 29 years I've been doing this, and
Mhm.
29 years ago, when I first read Louise Hay's book, "You Can Heal Your Life," I
Yes.
thought, what a lot of nonsense, total nonsense.
It's not.
Well, it's my Bible nowadays.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more I think she's got it right in about 85% of
Mhm.
cases. I honestly do.
Mhm.
So all physical problems in my world have emotional causes.
Mhm. I
All
believe
physical problems have emotional causes. So when in order to heal a physical problem fully, work on the emotional stuff which is underpinning everything.
Mhm.
Um, so, if I can give you a couple more examples
Oh,
of this.
please do, because I'm just looking. You had sent me some of your questions, and I try not to do that. I like to go where the
That's okay.
conversation's going to go. But this is fascinating because these are true life stories that people will
Yeah,
see
yeah,
various
yeah.
scenarios and how you were able to help them. So please be my
Oh,
guest.
that's okay,
Dying
good,
to hear
okay. It's great to riff like this, isn't it? I just love the riffing. It's just let's go with whatever comes.
Yeah.
So, for example, migraines. Now, my experience with migraines
Mhm.
are that they are usually caused by deaths in past lives where there have been blows to the head.
Okay.
And of course, the energy of all the blows is brought into this lifetime. So, again, an example of this. I had a 13-year-old boy brought to me who
Mhm.
was getting migraines every 3 or 4 weeks, and he was missing days, weeks at school. Very intelligent kid, and he couldn't keep his schooling going.
Mhm.
Um, and again, a 13-year-old boy, he didn't come to me to prove that past lives have caused his problem. He didn't know what his mother was bringing him to, really.
I
And his
got
mother sat in and watched the session in my office. His subconscious indicated that the cause of his migraines were 8 past lives.
you.
And
Wow.
this boy was a fast worker.
Mhm.
We cleared and worked in all of those 8 past lives in just over an hour. And
Wow.
I mean, it was extraordinary. And the first, I mean, for example, let me give you a sort of a run of what happened. He went into the first past life,
Mhm.
and he was a man in the past life, probably the life before this present life. And he was driving a car, and the car is hit by a truck, and it smashes into him, and he smashes his head on the steering wheel, dead. And then he went straight into the next past life, where he was a man in a garden, and his wife was having an affair with his best friend, and she wanted to finish him. So she
Mhm.
came up behind him with a big spade and smashes him round the back of the head, dead. And he went into the next past life where he was a warrior fighting in a battle, and somebody hits him with an axe in the head,
Oh,
dead. And he went into the next past life where he was fighting in a bar, and he got beaten down to the floor, and they're kicking him in the head, and he dies, dead. And he went into the next past life where he's an old man climbing up an old wooden staircase, and the staircase gives way, and he falls and lands on his head, dead. And he went into the next past
oh
life
gosh.
where he was a young boy at school, about 6 or 7 years old, and he kicked the school bully, and the school bully then got hold of him and started whacking his head against the wall,
Oh my
and he was concussed, and his mother picks him up, takes him to the hospital, but he dies on the way to the hospital. And I mean, I turned round at the end of the session to look at his mum, who was sitting behind me, and she was just sitting there like this. She couldn't believe it. Completely cured the migraines.
Do you think that he was able to do this so quickly because of his age and the energy? Like we're right on the cusp of puberty, when
Mhm.
energy can be frenetic. I find with adolescents, I mean, they can even perform moving items with that intense emotion, right? If they're angry, or is it because he was so ready to let go of this pain, or what are your thoughts? Like, why do you think that happened so
I mean,
quickly with him?
that's a great question, and I mean, what you've said there may be the case.
Mhm.
My sense, however, is
Yeah.
this: is that the subconscious protects us. Now, I
Yes.
work with children sometimes, and I use regression on children.
Right.
And what happens when the subconscious takes a child into a past life?
Mhm.
It isn't a trauma past life. The
Okay.
past lives have got a sort of a fantasy element to them. So
Really?
it means that the subconscious is safeguarding the child. That,
How
if in a
beautiful.
real past life the child got killed in a past life
Mhm.
horribly,
Mhm.
well, an 8-year-old kid is a 9-year-old child is not going to be able to
Or prepare.
experience that and integrate it into the life now. So the subconscious gives them a fantasy sort of experience. I had a young boy came to me who was about 10 with a lack of confidence,
Mhm.
and one of his past lives was just living on a desert island or an island on the shore, collecting seashells in the sun all day.
Mhm.
Well, there's no trauma there, but he got better. His confidence was boosted massively, and he felt so much better for doing that. So I think that this boy who was about 13 was a
Mhm.
bit in the middle of being a child
Mhm.
and an adolescent,
Mhm.
and his subconscious allowed him to experience the reality of the past lives,
Mhm.
but without all the real horror and trauma that maybe an adult would be able to
I got you.
experience.
Got you.
So
Okay.
it's sort of a middle way thing, really.
I
Um,
Oh, I
that
was
would
just
be my
gonna ask you to revisit back with children. Um, I guess what I want to ask when you're talking about the fantasy and say there is something, because I love that you work with children, because children experience many of the things that we do as adults, and we tend to think, well, they're only a child, that it's no problem or whatever, but they experience exactly what we do. So, do you have any cases that you could share when you're talking about this fantasy? Like you talked about the island and the seashells, but say it is from a traumatic death or something. And I love that. So beautiful that our subconscious protects that young child. It
yeah,
needs to, otherwise you create
yeah,
another problem, right? So,
yeah,
do you have
that's right. Yeah,
to
yeah.
share?
I mean, another boy again with a lack of confidence and an anxiety state, and he had a past life. He was a boy in the States who, and I'm just trying to think, his past life was on a sort of an island, and there was a sort of a tsunami came, and it washed everybody, lots of people away, including his family. But again, it was done in a very gentle way. So
Mhm.
again, he was allowed to experience a sort of a semi-trauma, you could say, but it didn't sort of re-traumatize him. It just took the energy out of the anxiety that was inside him.
I
So
You know what's interesting? And I don't know if this is, I don't believe in coincidence, but I'm going to say a coincidence. Both of these children you've mentioned are almost the same age. They both had a lack of confidence and one with anxiety, and these scenarios involved an island. Now, how do
no, yeah,
we feel when we have a lack of confidence, right? We're all alone. Nobody's experiencing what we are. It's almost like you're standing alone on an island. If you look at it, right? I wonder if that was part of it with the subconscious.
that's clever because the subconscious does like to work in metaphors sometimes.
Mhm.
And there's a whole school of metaphor therapy that sometimes us therapists do.
Mhm.
But yeah, sometimes they come through in the form of metaphors.
Mhm.
So, anyway, but physical pain. So another example of physical pain. Um, I'm one of the few therapists in the world who was taking part in hypnosurgery, where
Okay.
I took a client into trance and we did major surgery in a hospital without any anaesthetic.
Oh, I gotta hear more. I gotta hear more.
So um, this isn't in this book; it's in my next book. But
Okay.
this was a lady who came to me, and she'd been given 6 months to live by her specialist. She had a liver disease, which is very rare. It's called focal nodular hyperplasia,
Okay.
which, about 12 people in the UK have this at any one time. And hers at that time was the most aggressive case in the UK. Nobody really survives this because what happens is tumors grow on the liver. They're not cancerous tumors, but they grow to be the size of grapefruits and melons.
Mhm.
And of course, they then compress the tumor, they compress the internal organs. And my client, she came to me, she was in her mid 30s, and she could hardly walk up to my office. She was brought by two people who held her up, and she looked like a stick insect. She was drugged up to the eyeballs on morphine to try and get away from the pain. She felt sick most of the time. She couldn't eat. If she could eat, then she brought it back up again. She
Oh,
was just in constant pain. She spent most of the time just laying on her bed at home. She had a young daughter who was, I think, 3 or 4 years old, and
aw.
the daughter had no life. And basically, a specialist didn't know what to do. It's a rare disease, and they did what they thought they could do, but nothing would work. And they basically said, "I'm sorry, you've got to start thinking in terms of go away and write your will now. We estimate you've got 6 months left." So she sat in front of me and she said, "You're my last hope." And I mean, that's pretty pressurized for a
Yeah.
therapist.
Mhm.
And I took her into trance, and in our first session, she relaxed beautifully. And within a week after that first session, she was off the morphine. She was using her mind to control the pain and reduce the pain. We
Wow.
then did a lot more therapy to work on the emotional causes of the tumors. And the liver, of course, is the seat of anger.
It is.
And she was responding to a lot of anger that was inside and two past lives. And in one of the past lives, she was a Native American squaw who was killed in a raiding party on her village or her community by being stabbed in the back into the liver, and she died in
Mhm.
that life. And in the other past life, she was a young man in the Second World War, where she was bayoneted again in the back in the liver area. So of course her body had brought all that energy into this lifetime, and it only needed sort of certain things to happen in this life, and then that energy kicks in.
Mhm.
So we release the past lives and the traumas, and what happened is the tumors stopped growing. Now they didn't go away, but they stopped growing. So that was a remarkable thing, and she started to get her life back because the pain wasn't there so much.
Mhm.
I taught her self hypnosis. She was taking herself into trance to control things.
Mhm.
And then one day she came to me and she said, my specialist is very pleased with my progress. He would like to do an operation again. Now, they tried to do this operation twice before, and it was a massive disaster. In both cases, when she was in the operating theatre, she had to drink a dye down so that the surgeon could see what was happening up on a screen, on a monitor.
Yeah, fluoroscopy, yeah, and she couldn't keep
Okay,
it down,
she couldn't
right?
keep it down. So the surgeon was doing this delicate operation with the patient retching and gagging and vomiting all the way through. In the first operation, the first time they tried it, he damaged the liver itself. In
Oh,
the second operation, they damaged her gallbladder so badly she had to have a gallbladder removed. Both times it had taken about 3.5 to 4 hours to do the operation, and she spent weeks in intensive care. Oh, yeah, a couple of weeks, I think, in intensive care afterwards. And she sat there and said to me, the surgeon wants to do the operation again and try it again. And suddenly these words came out of my mouth. I said, well, we'll do the operation in hypnosis. And I thought, who said that?
yeah,
And
what?
she
Where
said,
did that come from? That didn't
where
come
did
from
that come
Lila.
from? She said, really? I said, oh, well, okay, yes, we'll do it in hypnosis. Thinking, oh dear, what have I done now, Burgess? You've dropped yourself in it here. So she said, I'll check with the surgeon, the specialist. He was very happy because he said, I'll try anything. I think he'd had such a bad time the
Right.
previous two operations.
What a brave surgeon too, especially after the first two experiences, so
Very much so,
kudos
yeah.
to
But I
you.
think he was desperate. He was desperate.
Mhm.
So we then started to do preparation. We did lots of rehearsals in trance so that I could get her to anesthetize her body so that
Yes.
she wouldn't feel anything, and also to get her to disassociate out of her body.
Yeah. Mhm.
When the operation came, I mean, I turned up at the hospital, major hospital in a big city here in the UK, and they got me all the gown and everything and the caps and took me into the operating theatre. And there is my client laying on the table, and all the lights are
Yes.
down and everything's beeping, and all the surgical team are around in caps and gowns. The anaesthetist was standing like this, looking daggers at me because she
Because
was
you took his
redundant for
job.
the day. Yes.
Job.
And the surgeon then said, right, you've got 5 minutes. So, okay.
No
So I
pressure.
exactly. I guided her into trance,
Mhm.
took her inside, and then got her to anesthetize her body so she wouldn't feel anything.
Mhm.
And then I disassociated her out of her body so that her awareness was up above. But then I thought, well, hang on. I wouldn't want to be watching an
Mm-mm.
operation, somebody operating on me. So I got her to imagine then floating up through every floor of the hospital. There were 13 stories, out through the roof of the hospital.
Mhm.
And I took her on a guided journey around the universe.
I love it.
So she was just exploring space.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I turned to the surgeon and said, okay, go with it.
Yeah.
And then what he did, he took the scalpel, and as he cut into her groin, a
Mhm.
spout of blood spurted in the air. And I suddenly remembered that I am very queasy about blood. I don't like blood and stuff like that.
Right.
So I went green and yellow and white and started to go very shaky.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, are you okay? I said, no.
No, I don't like blood. Mhm.
They sat me on a stool, and I'm thinking, come on, Burgess, you've got to,
Gotta stay
you're
with
supposed to
this.
be strong. I've got to see this through. So I managed to pull myself round. Um, to cut a long story short, the surgery was a complete success. It was over in after 90 minutes. She wasn't sick once. She didn't move at all. At one point, she said to me, I think I feel a bit sick, Steve. And we did a bit of work just to let go of that feeling of wanting to be sick. She was
Mhm.
completely calm. At the end of the surgery, the surgeon turned to me. He said, I have never seen like anything like this in my career. It was like operating on a dead body.
Mhm. Mhm.
He said, give me your card. I want to talk to you about this.
Mhm.
Well, I'm still waiting for that telephone call 25 years later.
Oh, you've got to be joking. Come on.
But
They all must have seen what you did. I was just thinking that before you said that, that whole room between nurses. Now, nurses are usually more open-minded. I can say that because we see things. I'm writing a book myself
okay, yeah,
about from nurses' perspectives, what we experience in, especially on the floor in the hospital, but also just before somebody passes away, because the things that we see, the things that we hear, they're unexplainable. And already got some incredible stories. And I'm also collecting stories from first responders, but especially from nurses, because we're the ones with the patients. We're the one that will be there.
yeah,
Usually, say
yeah,
somebody is terminal when they do
yeah.
pass from this lifetime, as I call transitioning back home. And we call the doctor and what have you. So yeah, there's some beautiful stories in there. So I could see why you would say, or the
Mm,
doctor would say, it was like operating on a dead body because,
mm,
with no disrespect, this is our meat suit. This isn't who we are, right?
yeah. It was just a set of clothes that we put on each time we come in.
That's right.
And you know, one of the wonderful things as well, Lorilei, about past life therapy
Mhm.
is that very often a client who undergoes it loses a fear of dying.
Yes. Oh, really?
It's
I have not
a
heard
natural
that.
side effect. It's just a natural byproduct. I don't charge people anymore for that. We're fixing a phobia, we're fixing a depression, we're fixing a anxiety state, whatever sexual problem, an
Mhm.
addiction problem. If they go through deaths in past lives, they
Mhm.
usually lose the fear of dying, and it's a wonderful thing
Oh,
to let go of that fear because then it frees you up. You become more free as a human being.
I want to ask you because we're seeing a lot of this right now with what's going on and people trying to cope. What are you seeing from past lives people are carrying forward that causes addiction? In general, there's a lot of reasons. I know there's a lot of reasons, but just
Mm.
maybe in general that you see more often.
Well, I mean, the therapy take we have is that any addictive substance is a means of anesthetizing inner emotional
I
pain.
agree. I agree 100%.
So, you know, there are lots of myths about addictions and drug addictions and things. Oh, the person's weak or they're stupid. No, they're not. I know I've met many clients over the years who are very intelligent people
Mhm.
who have got an addiction problem because they've got a bucket full of emotional baggage that needs to be released and healed. So that's a sort of a general sort of
But
way of
that's
looking
how
at
this
it.
therapy can help you in this lifetime, right? There's many practical uses for this. Can you share others that can help people in this lifetime right now, even with things maybe in this lifetime that like the woman, like you said, with the fear of the dogs at the beginning of the show,
Yeah,
that came
yeah, yeah.
from childhood.
We all have. I say we all have. The originator of inner child therapy, he
Mhm.
stated that only 4% of people are truly functional, which means that 96% of us are screwed up in some way.
I agree.
And I've yet to meet, I'm 64 now, I've yet to meet any of the 4%.
I'm gonna be 56 in August, and I have to agree with you. The same thing I've said about addiction. Nobody wakes up one day and says, "Hey, I think I'll become a sex addict or a drug addict or an alcoholic or what have you." What happens, whether they experience it on a whim, whatever it may be, it's exactly what you said, to anesthetize some type of pain. And what people don't realize, and I love to say, have a conversation about this, is everything on this planet is energy. And one of the laws of energy is it can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can be transferred from one place to another.
Mhm.
Well, whether you're carrying it from a past life, whatever you're carrying, but the thing they don't realize too is how powerful your words, your thoughts, and your emotions are. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I
Hmm.
mean, as hypnotherapists, we're trained to be very careful on how we use our words,
Yeah.
because you know we're working with the mind. The mind does become more open to suggestion when a
Mhm.
person is in trance. I mean, we're always open to suggestion anyway, because that's what advertisers do to us and politicians do to us,
Agreed.
and big pharma does to us. But we're always open to suggestion. But when we're in trance, the subconscious opens and it's more ready to accept suggestions about changing.
Mhm.
So, you have to be very careful what you say to people, how you say it.
Mhm.
But everything is energy, and if we can work with that and release and change, then people get better. I'm not sure
Mhm.
if that answers your question, but
You certainly answered it. Now, one of the things I do want, because these are some great questions that you had answered here. We've talked about some of the people, and I know we still, this goes by so quick. We've only got a half hour. It's just flown by. I was so excited to have you on because I'm so passionate about this topic.
yeah,
But
so much.
one of the things you had said, excuse me, and we talked about some of the people that will come in and seek your help. And I hope we can share some more examples as the half hour goes on. But what are the questions that they bring? We've talked about a few of them, but what are some of the questions that they bring?
How do you mean questions? In what sort of
Well,
ways, Laura?
I guess this was your number three thing. You said, what are the people or who are the people that seek your help and assistance? And what questions do they bring?
Questions more in terms of their issues. I think it's mainly sort of what type of issues that people bring,
I
and it's
think
a
you're
wide
talking about
range.
skepticism. I don't believe in the concept, maybe of
Oh, and that type of
and how
thing.
it can
Okay.
help them, things
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, most people are there because they just want to get help,
Mhm.
and so they're not all that bothered about how they get help. Just get me better. That's what a lot of
Right,
people say. But there are some people who, think that the whole concept of past life regression is bunkum. It's not real.
right.
It actually doesn't matter
Oh,
whether a person believes it or not.
mhm.
And even after they've been through a past life experience, they may still not believe that it was real, but they will get better. And even in the hypnotherapy profession, I mean, the work I do is actually quite controversial,
Mhm.
because even in the hypnotherapy profession, there are therapists who say there's no such thing as past life regression. Those people are imagining it all, they're making it all up to please you, and they're not pleasing me.
Mhm.
But it's a glib pat away. They're not prepared to look at things in more depth. And I actually say, if people who are skeptical about this would sit, I used to say in my office, but would sit watching my online sessions now, day after day, hour after hour, week after week, and they would see the extraordinary experiences and sometimes the detailed information that people come out with from a past life, and then the healings that take place. I believe they'd look at things much more seriously. They wouldn't be prepared to be so skeptical. They would say, there's maybe something very significant going on here.
Mhm.
And so it really doesn't matter if a person is skeptical or not. They can still get better. And, some people would say it's just a historical metaphor created by the subconscious. I don't agree with that, because that to me is, it's not the truth. I want the truth. And if the truth is that these are real experiences, then just pretending it's a metaphor so that somebody, their belief system isn't upset, well, that doesn't, I don't agree with that.
I don't
For
agree
me,
either.
the truth. Um,
We
I,
have a good question in the chat, actually. You know what? I forgot we're on StreamYard. It came from Facebook, and I think it's a really good question. Would you mind if I share it?
please do.
Okay, this is from Michelle, and she said, does your subconscious control whether you're ready to release what's she put controlling you? So what would be ailing the person for why they would be coming to see you? So the question is, what does your subconscious control whether you're ready to release what's ailing you or why they've come to see you?
Okay, that's a really good question.
It is a good question.
Yeah,
When I was reading it as you were speaking, I'm thinking, gosh, I don't know if I've
yeah.
ever really considered that answer, but it is a good question.
I mean, one way to look at this is that your subconscious, our subconscious wants us to be well.
Yes.
It has a desperate need for us to be well, so that we can raise our vibrations and we can all become freer, and then we can all change the world, because we become more balanced when we have therapy, so we're more free. So our subconscious is desperate for us as a soul to be well, and for the collective to be well as well.
Mhm.
So from that perspective, I believe the subconscious, yes, in most cases, wants a person to get better. It doesn't make a decision to say, I don't want you to get better.
Mhm.
What it may think, if you like,
Mhm.
is, um, you're not ready for this information yet, or you're not ready to explore this trauma because it was too traumatic.
Mhm.
So it may be that somebody's had a terrible death in a past life,
Mhm.
and they're not ready to relive it in this life. They're just not ready
Mhm.
because they can't integrate it. Maybe they're too fragile emotionally.
Mhm.
But with my system that I use, I ask the subconscious,
I
is it okay for us to explore this emotional stuff?
Mhm.
And in 99% of the cases, the subconscious says, yes, please. But in about 1% of cases, it says no. And if it says no, we don't do the regression. I
Oh,
negotiate a little bit, but if it still says no, we don't do regression. I'll do some other therapy. I've got other therapies that I use that I'm trained in. But it's not about controlling
mhm.
things. It's about saying, I don't think you're ready, so we want to keep you safe.
You know what my thought is though, especially when you have a pain that comes out of nowhere or whatever, and you and I know that that very well can come from past lives. Not always, nothing's an absolute, but what I'm thinking is, and I've always looked at pain this way, that pain is just the voice of the body, if you will. It's saying, hey, this needs attention. And first, it may start as something small, it gets louder and louder and louder because we're not, and is that coming from the subconscious? I believe it is. And like you said, 99% of the time, yes, I'm okay with this. Let's do this, right? Or for the
Yeah.
reasons maybe not, very, very minimal, but you still check. And I think people need to hear that too, because it is a new science. And to me, if I had my way and I was running the world, this would be one of the number one therapies in healthcare for me. Never mind the Eastern way with acupuncture, energy, balance. I think you used a very important word here. And living in this 3D existence, we have opposites. We have cold, we have hot, we have light, we have dark. But where I think the optimal place to be is in balance. And that's what makes harmony and peace in this world. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that one?
Well, you go back to what you said earlier, everything is energy.
Mhm,
And when we have good therapy and we start to heal, we
mhm,
become more balanced as a human being, as an individual. And because we are more balanced, we send out an energy of being more balanced into the world.
mhm.
And therefore, the world becomes more balanced. One of
Absolutely.
the most beautiful things about good therapy is that a person becomes less reactive.
Mhm.
So whereas before they were always reacting to things in some way, they
Yes.
become less reactive, they become calmer, and they're more able to be in the moment more easily, they're more able to meditate more easily. The mind starts to calm down, and they just send out a gentler energy, and
Mhm,
that energy just permeates the world.
mhm.
So, I mean, going back to what you said a few moments ago, Lorilei, this should be mainstream therapy.
Absolutely. Mhm,
When Freud was practicing and creating his ways of working and his
mhm,
theories, he played with hypnosis, he played with hypnotherapy.
mhm.
And the story goes that he wasn't very good at it. And so he
Okay.
dropped it and moved more into psychoanalysis as a process and created that as a healing process. If Freud had have stayed with hypnotherapy,
Yeah.
then this would be mainstream therapy. Okay, the past life stuff would still be a little bit left field, but generally hypnotherapy would be mainstream therapy. It is to some degree anyway. I mean, we've got doctors and
Mhm,
dentists practicing hypnotherapy around the world, but it's still, by the public, it's still viewed as a little bit different and a bit strange.
mhm.
Um, but whereas if Freud had really got his act together, the silly repressed man,
I know,
this
I
would be
agree.
mainstream therapy. So
Well,
yeah, very
even
frustrating.
psychotherapy and things like that, say with PTSD, and I was going to ask you a bit about that, but where I wanted to go with that first,
Mhm.
they're even going back to the hallucinogenics like LSD,
LSD,
drugs
yeah,
like that, right? And in a controlled setting with a practitioner who knows what they are doing as a physician, they can get years of healing done in 1 or 2 sessions versus
yeah.
psychoanalysis. So that
Yeah,
has something to say right there, right? And, I the same thing with, like I said, with hypnosis. And I think that you're right, had Freud stuck with that. And I didn't realize he had dabbled in hypnotherapy. Because as you
yeah,
were saying that, I'm thinking, my God, we wouldn't be where we are with Big Pharma. We wouldn't be with, just imagine how much more healthier we would be as a general population.
yeah, 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 totally.
Mm-hmm.
So, we need more therapies like this out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we need, this is why I'm here at, 3 o'clock in the morning
I keep
sharing,
forgetting that it's three
because
o'clock in the morning. Thank you so much for being here.
because I have such passion for it. I want people to get better.
Mhm.
I train therapists in these techniques, and I love it when they get people better using these techniques. It's like, well, I'm part of that healing process, so it
And it's
spreads out into the world.
now, are you comfortable sharing a few more cases from your book? Because I want people to go out and buy this. Like, it's going to blow their minds. Just the things that we've been able to talk about. But I'm imagining with your book that you have included some very extraordinary cases and incredible healing. So, are you comfortable sharing a few more?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
Depression, and
Thank you. Yes,
you
we
know,
need.
I've
Mhm.
had a lot of people cured of depression, as
Wow.
simple as by doing this work. So, again, let me become a bit controversial. The medical model, depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain,
Mhm.
is a lie.
I
It's
agree.
a lie that was created by drug companies in the 70s to sell antidepressants. There is no independent scientific research to support that at all.
Uh,
Depression is in most cases is an emotional problem.
mhm.
Okay, sometimes it can be caused by physical problems such as candida that can cause
I
depression, but in most cases it's locked in emotion, and the
mhm.
emotion that is causing depression is anger,
Really?
locked in
I
anger.
did not know that. I'd love to hear more.
That's the emotion. But anger is a composite emotion, which means that there's always another emotion underneath anger,
Mhm.
and it's usually sadness. And
Aw.
this is why depression is characterized by melancholy, because under the anger, there's the sadness. So
Mhm.
if we can tap into the emotional, energetic roots of the depression, we can release it. So I had a lady came to me. She was severely depressed, been depressed for most of her adult life. And we found, I think there were 8 past lives, 7 or 8, that caused this. And I can't remember all the lives now, they're in the book. But one of the past lives, she was a lady who had a young son, and the young son died. And she never came to terms with the boy's death.
Okay.
So she'd kept all of that emotional pain inside her and brought it into this present lifetime.
Mhm.
In another past life, she was a poverty-stricken flower seller in Victorian London, in the London of the, let's say, 1880s.
Right.
And she was desperately trying to stay alive, selling a few flowers every day. She was getting more and more sick. And one day she got so sick that she dragged herself to a doctor who was just near where she was sitting with her flowers. But he was a quack doctor, and he took her inside and he raped her and then killed her. So
Oh.
again, there was a lot of pain and fear that she brought into this life. In
Trust, I'm
another,
sure too, trust issues too, right? You think you go to
oh,
a doctor to be able to help you, that you're that ill, and look what happened.
good point. And part of the problem was because she also had a very difficult relationship with a boyfriend in this life. And
Mhm.
so there's another trust aspect coming in as well, or a past boyfriend.
Mhm.
In another past life, she was hung as a witch, and I've had hundreds of people
Yes.
over the years murdered as witches,
Yep.
hundreds of them.
Yep.
It was like an insanity that was running through the world, or Europe especially, for a couple of 100 years. So she was a woman who was accused of being a witch. She wasn't, and she was just hung and killed.
Mhm.
In another past life, she was a male soldier in a battle, and she ran away from the battle and became a coward. And then she was so guilt stricken by this that, in fact, he was guilt stricken, but he fell off his horse down a cliff and died. But those were just some of the past lives. So we released all those locked in energies. The depression got better and better and better, and then it just completely went. And I saw her in the city a few times, several years after that, and every time, "How are you?" she said, "I'm fantastic, completely better." So that's depression. Now, I, physical illness, I'm not claiming to cure cancer, not at all. But cancer has emotional causes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a complicated disease. There is different levels to it, and of course, a person has to think in terms of a program of different packages to get better. So my opinion is that the standard slash and burn approach is barbaric.
Mhm.
And
I
we need to look at changing the person's diet, the belief
Yes.
system, all sorts of things, getting rid of
Absolutely agree.
toxins.
I'm just going to add this quickly. I could not agree more with you. And again, I'm not telling somebody what treatment to take or whatever, but I've seen more people die of the chemotherapy approach than the disease itself. Sorry, carry on, please, Steve.
No, it's
I
fine.
had to add that. Hmm.
Um, and so I had a lady in Oslo a couple of years ago in
Hmm.
Norway, and she had lip cancer,
Hmm.
cancer of the lip. An unusual place to get cancer, but we found there were two past lives that were causing the emotional causes of the cancer. And and these were interesting because in the first past life, she was a young noblewoman who maybe in her late teens, who was very flighty and flirty. She had a young a servant, a male servant, who started to get the wrong messages from her, or she was flighty and flirty teenage girl, and he started to think that she wanted him. And one day he came over and he kissed her. Well, 300 or 400 years ago, this was, whoa, you're not allowed to do anything like that. She was shocked and she didn't know what to do. She pushed him away and said, "No, that's not what I want." And he was then shocked and frightened because he realized he'd overstepped the mark.
The line, yeah.
She,
Hmm.
she knew that she couldn't tell her father because her father would have been furious with the man.
Hmm.
So she told a friend or her sister, I think, who then told the father, and the father then has this servant executed in front of her.
Oh,
So
the
there's
guilt.
one example of speaking out. She spoke out
Hmm.
and something terrible happened. Remember, lip cancer, it's about speaking about, if there's a problem with the throat, it's often about speaking out. In the second past life, she was in, I think, in an African country, and she was raped as a young woman by one of the men in the village, but she couldn't tell anybody about it because she would have been ostracized, she
Yeah.
would have been blamed, and then no man would have wanted her
That's still
because she was
happening
a girl.
today in certain parts of the world when that happens. That's terrible. Sorry, go on. Hmm.
That's okay. And
Hmm.
so again, she couldn't speak out.
Hmm.
So there's all this energy around the mouth that from the past lives that was convoluted and horrible. So we released both of the past lives. She changed, made some lifestyle changes. She also started to have kinesiology, and kinesiology is an amazing therapy. She emailed me about 5 months later, and she just said, "Steve, I've been to the hospital, I've had all the tests. They cannot find a trace of cancer in my body."
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
So as I say, I'm not claiming to cure cancer. That's ridiculous. But what I'm saying is, in order to really heal these things, we work on the emotional causes.
Can I
I
a question I forgot before because we only got about 5 minutes. This has gone by too
okay.
quick. I hope you'll come back, Steve. I really do. Please. I know it's in the middle of the night, but I could talk about this for hours, and I know you're passionate too. So I hope you'll come back again.
I'd love to. And we've
But
not we've not even talked about the alien abduction regression stuff that I've done before.
you have to come
We've
back.
not
You have to come
we've
back,
not
please.
even talked about spirit release work, which sometimes happens. So
Well, I have
yeah,
one
please.
question for you that's probably going through people's minds. And I understand why, but people may not. Why people are probably thinking, why do we carry these things from past lives into this life? What
Yeah.
purpose does
Well,
it serve?
I think it's really to do with the concept of reincarnation, and I think the traditional sort of Hindu Buddhist concept of reincarnation is that we have to live many, many lifetimes to explore and experience all sorts of things, to grow as a soul.
I agree.
And eventually, over many lifetimes, we are able to sort of stop being reborn.
Mm-hmm.
And we can then move off up to higher sort of spiritual places, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take on it.
We
But
carry
many,
that though, that trauma, like, is it because of the way that maybe we've passed or what we've experienced that we've never released it in that lifetime? So it's still part of that part of the soul that we're carrying into this lifetime. Is that what you believe?
yeah, it's like an energy that comes
Oh,
from life
gotcha.
to life. So we change from life to life. We're not the same person every lifetime, but there are elements of us that are. And I mean, my favorite sort of spiritual teacher, Rupert Spira, who's a non-duality teacher, he talks about whirlpools in a river. And he
Mhm.
says at some stages we're a whirlpool here, but then the whirlpool eases away and
Mhm.
the elements of that whirlpool are moved downstream and
Right.
perhaps recreating another whirlpool. But that's a different whirlpool to this one. But some of the energy of this first whirlpool will be in the second one and the
Okay.
third one, etc. So it just appears that life after life, we bring this stuff in. It doesn't mean to say it all ripens in a particular life, because we've lived many, many lifetimes. But certain past lives ripen in order for us to grow, in
Gotcha.
order for us to teach us things.
Mhm.
And there is a concept, of course, that before we come in, we sort of plan the life anyway
Yeah, I
and
agree.
decide more or less what's going to happen. Although I do understand that that is never set in stone. You know, things can change as we go through lifetimes, as we take more control
I
of ourselves and as we grow.
I hope you will come back. I'll have better internet, so when there's a pause, I'll know there's a pause.
Well, it hasn't been a problem, really. Honestly, it really hasn't.
Aw, you've been such a pleasure and delight. I want to share this comment with you from Zach Man. He said, "Awesome show tonight. Thank you, Steve, for joining us this evening." And then he said, "Have a good morning on your end of the pond." And he said, "Have a good night, everyone. And we'll see you all tomorrow night," because I co-host a show tomorrow night as well. Because will you please come back? Because you're right. I didn't even see that part yet about I forgot completely. I was so engrossed in what we were talking about, and I know people would love to hear about the alien abductions
Yeah.
and the whole.
Past lives as animals, past lives where we've been animals as well.
Oh,
So
yes, definitely. Because
all
my
sorts of stuff
son
like that. I'd
actually
love to
had
know that.
very quickly, my eldest son, when he was a teenager, one of his friend's moms did a lot of different work, not a hypnotherapist, but I'm not sure what they did together, but they did a little bit of work. And at that time, I had heard from some of the mentors I was working with that we can't come back as animals, and I didn't ever believe that. And my son shared this fascinating experience where she guided him through this. She didn't hypnotize him, but he believes he was a wolf. And he told me the whole story about the wolf and what color and what the purpose was and everything involved with it. It was fascinating.
Brilliant.
Mhm.
I had a client in Colorado today who was a mouse in a past life.
A mouse.
A mouse, a little mouse running
I
around.
love
Yeah.
it. So where can
So
people find you, Steve? Because Helen Meldon just said, "Thanks, Steve. Great show as well." So where can they find you and your book? Like what? Because you guys, you got to go out and buy this. We barely scratched the surface what's
yeah,
with the cases that are in your book.
yeah. Well, the book's called The Power of Past
Yeah.
Life Regression. It's also available as an audio book on Audible, etc. So I recorded it last year. So people prefer audiobooks. My website, the main website is lionheart-training.com.
Love
That's
it.
Lionheart, as in Richard the Lionheart,
Love it.
training.com. I
Mhm.
also have a WordPress, which is hypnoblogpod.wordpress.com. That's got most of my blogs and podcasts on.
I'm going to
Um,
add that, Steve, because I got just from your Facebook page, the first website. So if you get a chance, can you type that to me in Messenger and I'll add it to the banner that I put out?
Thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Facebook is Power of Past Life Regression, but what I love people to do is to go onto my YouTube channel, which has got free hypnotherapy recordings on there. 21 free hypnotherapy recordings. I'm just want hypnotherapy out in the world, so they're all free. That is called Hypno for All, HYPNO the number 4 ALL, Hypno for All, 21 professionally recorded hypnotherapy recordings for all sorts of things: irritable bowel syndrome, anxiety, childbirth, smoking, weight loss, whatever. Just let people get on there and have a listen. And please subscribe, because it's starting to have plenty of subscribers.
Mm-hmm. I
So
want
that's a bit of me.
from the bottom. You know what? Like I said, I was talking to Michelle and Amelia before we went live because we have a paranormal host chat that we do on Mondays. Friday night, it's politics that we do. But I was mentioning, because their banner just happened to come up, and I said, "You just had Steve on your show," and they said, "Oh my God, we just loved him." And I said, "Well, I haven't met him yet, but I'm so excited, and I can't wait to have you back on again, Steve. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, especially since it's the middle of the night or early morning, depending how. I hope you can get some sleep."
Time for bed now for me, and then I'll start work this afternoon with clients. So yeah,
All right.
it's
Well,
been a
we
real
be in
pleasure. Thank you
touch.
so much, Lorilei. Thank you. Yes, it's been a real
Thank
pleasure, and thank you.
you. You
Thank
have
you
a
so much.
great sleep. Get some, and we'll be in touch, because I'm going to have you back, because we got to talk about all the stuff we didn't get to just yet.
Okay, there's bucketfuls more. There really
I
is.
can't wait. Thanks, Steve.
Thank
Take
you. My
care.
pleasure. Lots of love to you. Lots of love.
Lots of love to you too. And to
Bye bye.
everybody that's watching, or if you're listening on the replay, I send you all so much love and light. Like I said, I will be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Central Standard Time till 11 p.m. And we will be back with Tripping the Void with Seraphine Hurley. You can get a hold of me on facebook.com/The Angel Rock. And I want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. And again, sending you much love and light and gratitude for being here. We'll see you next week. Good night, everybody. We're still live. We always are a few minutes live till we see Joe messing around in the background. Thank you, Steve, so much. What a pleasure.
That's kind. Thank you. It would be great. I love talking about this stuff. It's what I do. So,
No,
and
Gavin sent me your stuff. I just seen Past Life Regressions, and I wrote him back, yes, because I am really passionate about this. And I will be sending resources, if you're okay, to work with you, because I do really recommend Past Life Regression for a lot of people, to see if that might be something that could be helpful, because I get a lot of people that say, like I said, crystal Reiki's not working, or anything or sometimes spirit will give that to me, that this is something that may be very helpful. So
good point. Yeah, I understand that. So yeah, please do. I'm here. I'm very busy with clients. I'm very, very, very busy.
I can't even imagine.
It's it's hard to fit people in, and live my own life as well. But
Absolutely. Well, no, I would think after this many years, like nobody's going to get in a week. But if somebody's really interested, and or even to check your channel out, that I thank you for doing that. That's will help so many people too.
I just think it's great that hypnotherapy can be out there, and it shouldn't be an elitist thing. If people really can't afford to see a therapist, at least the second best thing is to play some hypnotherapy recordings. So so important. Yeah.
You get some sleep. I'll hang out here. Joe hangs in. I don't want to keep you up any later, and I'll be in touch with you to have you back on, if that's okay. I'd love to.
Absolutely, please do, Lorilei. Just send me a message. I'm very, very happy to come back. Okay.
Okay. Have a great sleep. Talk to you later.
Yeah, good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Now we are still live. Thank you, Helen. I see you signed in at the last minute. We're just waiting for Joe. He'll be signing me off. And then the next show will be on, I believe it's Dave Scott will be on very shortly after me. I think in about an hour from now. But we always have live stream recordings or previous archives playing if there's not one of our live hosts on here. So you can always be entertained on UPRN.
Damn Skippy hippie.
We're still live.
I know. I was just coming to say hi. Oh, I thought you were on until midnight.
No, I'm on till 11.
Are you sure? I thought you was
I'm
on at midnight.
sure.
I think you messing with me, man.
He was awesome. And then he added at the last minute, well, we didn't get to the alien abductions. What? How do we miss the alien abductions?
Well, that's why
come back
that's
on.
why you bring him back. That's why you bring him back.
Coming back. Yeah.
All right. Well, let us get out of here so I can go night night.